Our elation at having finally captured the satellite quickly turned to disappointment when we couldn't seem to get rid of it. The first 3 attempts to deploy were unsuccessful, and we were starting to think about sending somebody out in the payload bay to cut it loose and get rid of it when the ground called up a reconfiguration of power buses, and that the 4th attempt at deploy was successful. Intelsat spun out of the bay and separated from us at about 2/3 of a foot per second, and it's now in geosynchronous orbit. It's all appendages deployed, solar drum deployed. They didn't do any damage to it. It seems to be working fine. It's in the middle of its checkout and should be an operational communication satellite by the middle of July. We did let them back in after a time, although they were asking me why dinner wasn't ready when they came in. True. But in actual fact, none of us had eaten during those days.
Well, between the excitement of EVAs and rendezvous, certainly one of the most pleasurable things about space flight is looking out the window at this beautiful planet we call Earth. And so we took quite a few still photos we hope to share with you here in a minute. Here's a nice photo of the birth of a hurricane out over the ocean. You know, we ended up with enough gas, we determined to do one more rendezvous up there, and so we were looking for any target of opportunity. However, the ground said we didn't have quite enough to reach the moon to finish up the day. As we coast here over, you can see Cuba in this scene, the tip of Florida to the right, the Bahamas. I think the Bahamas, that area is just one of the most magnificent sights we saw up there as far as looking down on ocean scenery. Andros Island, the area called the Tongue of the Ocean there, and we've got a good still photograph of this we'll talk a little bit more about later, but really a beautiful planet we live on.
After 3 EVAs, by the morning of our 4th EVA, we pretty much had the preparation procedures down pat, and most of the crew was trained in how to do that. This is a shot of me before I got in the suit using the 0G technique of getting the air bubbles out of our water bottles that we carried in our suit, and that water and a little food stick is all the water or food we had during the time that we were outside. And really you didn't have enough time out there, you were so busy to eat or drink. This is a shot of the middeck with the extra 2 spacesuits that we had to move out of the airlock along with all the other gear for 7 crewmen that we had to stow and keep in order during our EVAs. Inside the airlock, one of the first things I noticed was how much more room there was in there with just Kathy and not Rick and Pierre in there with me. Bruce came in and started making suggestions that he thought he'd fit in my suit about here, and this was my response to that.
I was quite happy to get a chance to go out after having dressed them up and send them out to play the day before. I thought it was nice that I would get a turn to do that. Climbing this pole for the first time was actually kind of a thrill. As you can see, it's moving around as I'm climbing it. I'm holding on very tightly with my hands and my feet. But in actual fact, it was very easy to do that. Movement was quite easy out there. The harder part is stopping. And I was moving slowly so that I wouldn't go squirting off the top when it came time to stop. As the Earth goes by below you, if that's all you can see, you get the sensation that you're pitching, because the scene is moving in front of you, and your body's not moving, but it sort of seems that way. We built half a bay of truss, which was half of a cube, about 14 feet on a side. Moving those members, 14 or some as long as 25 feet, was kind of interesting when you're only handling it from one end. To make the joints, the EVA joints, you had to be very precise in your positioning of the strut, and as it turns out, it was, rather than positioning it very precisely, you just sort of waited until it drifted through the right position, and if you were lucky, you could slam it in when it was just right. It was far easier to do an operation like you see here, where there was one of us on each end of a strut.
One of the Space Station Freedom Assembly tasks that we were trying to accomplish up there was to be able to mate 2 large structures. So what we did was we pulled out the MPES here with the arm, which is the multi-purpose experiment support structure. Tom and Kathy went ahead and built some legs on this structure, and then we went ahead using voice commands only, tried to attach the legs off the MPES with the structure that they built, the big fixture back in the back of the payload bay, and tried to dock those together just using voice commands.
And this is after doing that pallet attach technique, going ahead and stowing the equipment in our toolboxes we had there on the platform, the MPES. We also did an evaluation of a crew self-rescue device called our crew propulsion device, CPD, which is designed to be used if a crew member was to become detached from space station when you didn't have an orbiter around to come and rescue you. It's a modification of the old handheld maneuvering unit we used during Gemini and Skylab days. It's a nitrogen gas device that has small jets that you can use to rotate your body and to translate. It turned out the rotation and translation worked quite well. The problem was that we saw rather quickly was in determining what direction you were rotating in the payload bay and then to put that wand in the proper position to stop it.
Our pre-flight plan was for 2 ASIM EVAs, and on the first one Tom and I were to build the structure, and on the second one Rick and Pierre were to take it down. Since we were cut down to only 1 ASIM EVA, Tom and I also had to disassemble the structure.
The flight crew got tired of saying they couldn't go outside, hearing we couldn't go outside, so Dan decided to demonstrate that we were capable of, well, maybe they made the right decision, not sending us outside. We had a little stress relief here after the intense mission, and on the day before coming home, we were doing a little fluid dynamics here, in this case with some Kool-Aid and lemonade droplets and letting them float together and mix in zero gravity, and then Bruce shows the alternative method of drinking fluids in orbit. The military members of the crew, a couple of them, of course, had to do a little close order drill while we're up there, and this has been done before, but I want to point out, you notice our feet are not touching the floor in this motion here, and that you can move like crazy up there, and you won't really translate unless you bump into anything, but you can rotate. We decided after this that the Coast Guard march is much better than the Air Force. Pierre, living out one of his Walter Mitty dreams here to one day become a magician, demonstrate a little levitation here of KT off the middeck floor. All he lacked, he said, was the hula hoop to run down the length of her body to prove there are no hidden wires or strings attached. And KT, after her hard EVA the day before, decided to show us how she prefers to unwind on orbit after a stress-filled day. Really did find that kind of difficult to relax up there. If you like to exercise or go run or whatever to relieve stress, you just didn't have that opportunity in zero gravity. So this is a well-spent day as we prepared for re-entry and cleaned up the ship and got her ready to come home and do the final checkouts before entry day.
Well, as the sun quickly set in the west, the mission came to an end and it was time to come home. We got to do an entry during daylight, which was really interesting. We made a low pass on Hawaii and came into the Edwards complex, landing on runway 22. We still had one primary objective left, and that was to test the drag chute. After over 3.5 million miles, we touched down, and about the time the nose gear touches down, you'll see the drag chute start out from below the horizontal tail. Right about now, there it goes. That pilot chute, the drag chute in a reef condition, it opens about halfway first and then opens full open. The half opening, we really didn't feel any of the opening shock, but when it opened the full way, as you see it here, there was a significant tug in our shoulder harnesses, and we were getting about an 8 foot per second squared deceleration rate. We did that to about 100 knots, at which point we started using the brakes a little bit. And at 60 knots, we detached the drag chute, and we do that so it doesn't drape down over the engine bells. That's going to be the standard procedures at 60 knots, dropping it off onto the runway. The rollout was completed, and then, as most flights, you have about a half hour or so's worth of powering down and then reconfiguring in the cockpit, and then we're able to get out. We felt pretty good about the mission. It had been real interesting and challenging, and we're real happy with the way Endeavour performed. It performed like a real champ, which is phenomenal for the first flight of a new vehicle.